Good evening, everybody. It's good to see some new faces on today. Also, if we can keep everyone, Randy and Kay, muted, that would be great. We'll go over all of our guidelines today. We want to welcome you all to this will probably be our fourth in a series of 5 meetings regarding certainly a sensitive issue for our community, regulated parking for certain portions of Girard and Frankfurt Avenue. With us today is Ann O'Neill from the Philadelphia Parking Authority, who will be going through with us the parking studies that were done in April and May of 2021, and also back in the Frankfurt Avenue study back in 2016. The reason for doing this has certainly been a while since we've been able to engage with everyone. Just by a little bit of background, back in February 19th of 2021, we, meaning the Fishtown Kensington Area Business Improvement District, held a full transportation meeting, meaning we had meetings with people from PPA, SEPTA, Streets, PennDOT, to go over things that are going on in the neighborhood, effects of the pandemic, current projects. And during that, we talked about the issue of regulated parking. Since then, on December 4th of 2021, we held another evening parking meeting where we again went through the study we're going to go through today, as well as we're able to have questions and answers. Certainly some time has gone by, so we felt it important that everyone have an opportunity to both hear about the study, how it was done, the recommendations, and also to be able to have their say. The way we're going to do this is, as we did it last week, I will be leading Ms. O'Neill through the 2 reports, go through the recommendations that were made by both the Fishtown Bid and the Fishtown Neighbors Association. And then each of you will be given 2 minutes to be able to provide comment, questions if we can answer them. We certainly ask everybody, listen, we want you to give your full opinion and feel free to share it freely and comfortably. We ask that everybody respect everybody else's opinion. All we're simply trying to do, and I think we all can agree, that certainly the parking situation in our neighborhood and in our commercial corridor needs to be addressed. We are very fortunate that our corridor and the community begins to grow. And I'm talking about both commercial and residential density. And we're seeing that not just on Frankfurt Avenues, it's extending down towards Lehigh, on Front Street, and even parts of East Girard. And the one things that we've certainly seen, certainly as somebody who now works and lives here, and certainly someone who visited, there was always an issue regarding the ability to park. We're the only major commercial corridor, or any commercial corridor in the city of Philadelphia, that has no regulations, which means there's no turnover whatsoever. So we identified this really as a 2-pronged problem. First of which was that the businesses, if people were coming to eat, to shop, if they couldn't get a spot, you always run the risk that that person, that patron, could get frustrated and leave, and business is lost. But B, there was also a trend, and I've certainly seen it, where if somebody couldn't park at or near the destination that they were going to, they would then go park in the residential streets. And that certainly took away the residential parking stock, which was just as limited. So we're looking to try to find, hopefully, the fairest way to do this. What you're going to hear about tonight and the recommendations would be, if they're pursued, a pilot program, meaning it would be an 8-month program to evaluate to see if there's any difference made to alleviate. We all understand that we wish we could have an easy answer that could solve the problem totally with maybe no inconvenience or pain to anyone. I always say that if that existed, we would have done that already. So we're going to ask that during this, everybody's mic will be muted. When it comes time, make sure you obviously make note to yourself of the questions you want to ask. And when we're ready to go, just put your hands up and we will call on you. So having said all that, I want to introduce Ann O'Neill from the Philadelphia Parking Authority, who's joining us again. This is our second week. I guess next week, the 28th, will be our last. So, Ann, it's beginning to be a regular routine, but thanks for joining us this evening.
No, you're quite welcome. I'm glad to be here.
And by the way, Ann, just for everybody's edification, what's your position over at the Philadelphia Parking Authority?
So I'm the manager for plan and analysis, which oversees the regulations for the city of Philadelphia for parking.
So would that department be responsible for initiating studies, et cetera, in order to bring about those regulations?
That's correct, Mark.
And did the PPA I guess it was at our request back in early spring of 2021, do a parking study of certain parts of Frankfurt Avenue and East Girard Avenue?
Yeah, to do a comprehensive parking survey for the Frankfurt Ave business corridor.
Great. Kay or Randy, if we can pull the 2021 report up so everybody can follow along, that'd be great. We can go to the next page. Next page. Thank you. So if we can, so we talked about, obviously, this was back in April 27th of 2021, and it went through May 15th of 2021. And as the report said, it's really made to analyze parking trends. If you can briefly, Ann, can you talk about the procedure of how the study was conducted?
So the studies were conducted on a Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday during 3 time frames, which was 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., and 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. In total, there were 9 surveys conducted on each day. So the survey, the areas that were surveyed was Frankfurt Avenue from Allen Street to Jefferson Street, and Girard Avenue from Front Street to Marlborough Street.
Gotcha. So it looks like a total of 18 surveys were covered through the designated weeks.
Yes.
And how did it come? So when you broke up I guess you did it in two zones. If we could turn the next page, Kat. So area 1 is the Frankfurt Avenue zones that you talked about?
Yes.
And area 2 would be the East Girard.
Correct.
And in doing the study, it looks like you broke it down into 3 type of parking categories: parking spaces, safety spaces, and courtesy spaces. Can you describe what each of those are briefly?
So safety spaces are your no parking, like corner clearances, driveways, hydrants, and bus zones. I know buses go down Frankfurt Ave and also Girard. So parking spaces, of course, are regular, like where there are legal spots, there are legal places to park. Courtesies would be kind of considered like loading zones, passenger loading, and truck loading.
And I guess it goes, forgive me, it goes without saying, the areas that you were being studied, there are no regulations there at all, correct?
That is correct. There might be a couple loading zones on Frankfurt Ave.
Sure. So in essence, if someone just legally parks their car and the car is legally registered, it can stay indefinitely.
Yes.
Question, I always like to make sure everybody understands. For parking regulations to be in this, obviously initiated, is PPA the only entity in charge of doing that? Meaning doing the study?
Yes. So if you wanted something like a safety study, like how they get walkways, crosswalks, and that would have to be with the streets department.
Gotcha.
And
So
stop
for
signs.
actual
We don't do
parking
stop signs.
availability.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, and if we could go to the next page. And through that, to the next page or two, those are just some of the different descriptions. Okay, you can flip back real fast. Or codes that are used in the report. Is that right, Ann?
Yes.
All right, and I don't want to belabor too much, but certainly we've made sure in both all the postings for this, and I know during the past, at least the years that I've been working on this, we've certainly made sure to circulate this report via social media, on our weekly email blast, certainly all the meeting blasts. I know Fishtown Neighbors at least had it, but we made sure certainly for these meetings that we provided that to some of the social media groups like Fishtown is Awesome, et cetera, because we want to make sure we got this out there. So, Kay, if you could go to page 6, the findings page. And the first sentence, so it kind of covered what we said. It says, given the Fishtown business corridor is almost entirely unregulated, it would stand to reason that there's a scarcity of open parking available at any given time. And then you went into descriptions of both occupancy rates and, forgive me, I want to make sure I get it right, and turnover rate. Can you talk a little bit about what those are and what you found?
So of course, occupancy is the car being there. Vacancy means if we consider a kind of a legal spot that it's, that there is no car parked there. But if a car is parked there, that's called an occupancy. So we're looking for the turnover, how many times that vehicle leaves the area.
And certainly for, I guess, area 1, which is the Frankfurt Avenue portion.
Right.
And again, that's from Allen to what street?
So that went from, that went from Allen to Jefferson.
Gotcha. And it says that was 86% occupied.
Right.
Is there a percentage amount that jumps out to the PPA that that it's inordinately high or higher than it should be?
So usually 75 to 85.
Okay. And Girard Avenue area 2, that was 88%. And again, which area was that for Girard? I'm sorry. I
Right.
think it was front to Marlboro.
It was front to Marlboro, right.
Gotcha. And turnover rate, tell a little bit about that.
So the turnover rate was, so when we were doing the overall occupancy rate for Frankfurt Ave, the turnover percentage for each one. So if you look at page 8 for the turnover rate, you'll see 1400 Frankfurt Ave, take for instance, it's an 18% turnover, that's pretty low.
Sure. In fact, it looks like in the report, and it says for Frankfurt Avenue, I guess as a total, the turnover was 14%, and
As
your
a
East
total,
Girard
yeah.
was 18. Am I
Right.
reading that correctly?
Yes, that is correct, Mark.
And then you make a conclusion on page 7. If we can. Thank you, Kay. The last sentence says the answer of why is clear. Regulated parking creates turnover. Before we jump into your findings and recommendations, and one of the things, certainly when this was done, I guess April, May of 2021, we were certainly far more affected by the pandemic than, at least I think, hopefully now. Is there anything in your understanding or belief that would make you think that these numbers would have improved?
I don't think so, Mark, because if you go back to even a 2016 study and compare both of them, they kind of give the same results for that area, for that location.
Sure, and we'll go to that. If we can flip, Kay, to page 10. I know the next couple pages are some helpful graphs breaking down by block and time, which I think is important. We get to the recommendations page, and we'll kind of delve into some of the minutiae here. Certainly, it leads off by saying, needless to say, some course of action needs to take place in the surveyed area to increase turnover and create a better parking environment overall. Can you describe both the recommendations and what some of the areas of the city that may have each?
Right. So, so the first option could be we install parking zones during the daytime that become residential permit parking in the evening and overnight hours. For instance, like locations could be for 2-hour meter parking from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or to 10 p.m. And then 2-hour residential permit parking from 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. until 8 a.m. This would give patrons, the businesses, easier access to parking during the day, and residents being able to have those spaces back in the evening hours. This would be like the parking regulations. We have these type of regulations at around Washington and Broad Street in South Philly. And it seems like it's helped the businesses, like it was beneficial for the businesses and the residents.
Sure. And how about the second option that you described there?
You're right. So the other option would be to have 3-hour meter parking from 8 a.m. until midnight and have a RPP override, which means any resident can park in that space without paying the meter as long as they have a permit.
And we talked about it before. I want to make sure everyone kind of gets this information. Can you first describe the costs of a residential parking permit?
So for a resident to, for a household to get permits, the first vehicle would be $35, and the second vehicle in the household would be $50. The third would be $75, and 4 or more would be $100.
Gotcha.
For the year. It's an annual permit.
Sure. And I know we talked about it before. In order to qualify, at least to be able to park here, you have to live within a certain zone. Is that right?
That's correct. And your car needs to be registered to that address.
Sure. Well, do you know what zone we are? I know it's 109, 125. I know it encompasses that. If I
So yeah, so it's District 10 and District 25.
Gotcha. And just to be clear, so during those hours and only those areas, I want to make it clear to everybody, if a resident has that permit, they don't have to, they would not be required to pay anything.
That is correct, Mark.
One of the things that I know both the Fishtown, Kensington area bid and Fishtown Neighbors Association, one I think preferred, if possible, was, is there an option to be able to do this without the actual installation of meters or kiosks?
So we could do a timing where we would time you for 2 hours.
Right.
We could install.
So that would mean no one would
way
have to feed anything other than if they exceed the time, they
Right.
would get a ticket.
Right. A parking enforcement officer would time the vehicle the first time they observe the vehicle being parked in this regulation.
And that was the one I know that was put forth by both of our respective organizations.
Okay.
The only difference obviously with the meter besides feeding it is if someone wanted to extend it, they would be able to do so.
With the meter, that is correct.
Gotcha. Can you and lastly, you just make some comments and recommendations regarding implementation or creation of loading zones, if you could.
Right. So I think it would benefit to have several 30-minute loading zones installed on, on Frankfurt Ave and Girard. So loading zones tend to be occupied at a rate approximately 50%, as the report showed. Due to the Carter having several businesses of, grab and go nature, where you just want to run in and grab a cup of coffee or a sandwich or what have you. Placing some zones outside would give the businesses more access to much needed turnover.
And this would be something the individual property owners, well, obviously with our help, could file for.
Would have to, yeah, they would go ahead and apply for, which we have an application.
Sure, certainly. And then obviously at the rest of the study is a lot of details. And so it's basically the remaining pages. Okay, if you can just kind of give a brief highlight on each page, is the actual specific details and counts that were found for this report. Is that correct?
Right. Yes, Mark.
Gotcha. But this wasn't the first report that was ever done, at least for Fishtown.
No, we were requested back in 2016 to conduct a study.
Gotcha. And that study, though, was only for Frankfurt Avenue.
That was for just Frankfurt, yes.
Yeah, it looks like it was for the 1000 block to the 1400 block, which I
Right.
guess is the same areas we're talking about now.
But just Frankfurt, yes.
Gotcha. I'm going to wait a moment because lovely Kay Anderson, the Director of Operations, is making sure everyone sees all that. Thank you. By the way, I want to make sure before we go to the next thing, I want to thank our Director of Operations, Kay Anderson, and also our Marketing Director, Randy Sherwood. I was about to call you by your maiden name after 30 some years. But just for all their hard work and taking the time in the evenings to work with us here. Okay, we're ready for you when you are. So it looks like, so we have this is a copy of the study from 2016. If we could flip to the next page. There we go. Could you describe a little bit, and both how this was done and kind of what you saw there and what areas?
So it was pretty much conducted the same way, Mark. The thing here though, we did recommend maybe having a motor scooter zone, maybe in some locations on Frankfurt and Girard. The only thing with the motor scooter zones, you would definitely have to have a kiosk.
Gotcha. And I think for this report, that was recommended for the 1100 block of Frankfurt.
Right.
So going through, it looks like you did this study the studies were done Saturday and Thursday afternoons through the evening,
Yes.
because that's where the statement was made. The parking patterns even then reveal that there is a need to create parking regulations. And then it goes through the reasons why vehicles are parking for over 2 to 3 hours after the initial visit. Also, people are often parking on Frankfurt Avenue and then taking public transportation to and from work and leaving their cars. Ultimately, the conclusion on that page, and forgive me for reading, I just want to make sure we bring that out. Under these circumstances, vehicles stay for long duration and the prospects to have available parking spaces for business customers are unattainable. If we could turn to the next page. We'll go through kind of block by block very briefly, but right at the top there, Anna makes a recommendation again, which is again, regulations for the 1000 block to 1400 block. Am I correct?
That is correct, Mark.
And each one kind of goes through, I don't want to belabor it. The first paragraph there is the 1000 block and the 1100 block. And it talks more about meters and the times. But again, the times look like it's an 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. time frame. Is that right?
Right, that's correct.
Yeah. Now the 12 through 1400 blocks seem to be more of the busy stuff because of the active business hours.
Right, there's more businesses and I think they go to later.
Now, the last study didn't comment on that. Okay, if you could flip the page. Or just scroll down. I think this happened last time too, didn't it? Okay, great. I know that the 2021 study didn't do it, but this study actually does. Second paragraph, there is lack of a better word, there's a PPA parking lot at the 1300 Frankfurt Avenue. It has about 20 spaces. That, as of now, is not regulated. Is that your understanding?
No, yeah, it's not. It is not regulated, Mark.
Is there, in this report, was there a recommendation regarding that lot?
In the 2016?
Yes, in this one, not
Yeah,
in the 2021.
it was recommended at that time.
In fact, it says here, there's a small PPA parking lot which was occupied 100% of the time throughout the day. It is highly recommended for this lot to have parking restrictions.
It's a very small lot.
Sure, not many cars, it just, but I know that was certainly something that's been discussed.
Right.
And then you finally conclude there with the 1400 block, and it says the parking rate range is 75 to 82%. So it's sort of in that ballpark.
Yeah.
And then one of the things, can you read that next sentence after 82%?
So the parking regulations for
Oh,
Frankfurt
1400,
Avenue?
the last paragraph.
Oh, the Frankfurt Ave West Side is under a long-term construction project?
Right after 82%.
Oh, okay. The available parking on the entire Frankfurt Ave strip is non-existing.
So and obviously you've reviewed numerous times, certainly at least these two meetings or more, both studies. Was there any drastic changes that you saw from both the 2016 report and the 2021 report?
No, they were very similar, Mark. Like I said, the only thing pretty much different was that we weren't asked to look at the live.
Now, and just for everybody's edification, the recommendation that had been requested by the BID and FNA boards was in these areas that we talked about. Regulated 3-hour parking from 8 a.m. To either midnight or 2 a.m. with the residential parking override. We also asked that we wouldn't do this via meters, but by the timing so that nobody would have to feed it. We were trying to find a way to be as understanding of our residents and businesses, because, and I know you clarified this last week, for business owners, there is no such permit like there is for a residence.
There is not, there's no ordinance for a
Right.
business, a permit for businesses.
But on the other side, if it's the timing that we talked about, they wouldn't have to feed a meter either. They just have
They
to
would not
move the
have to
pole.
feed the meter, but they would only be able to stay for the 2 hours that is allotted to them, and then they would have to remove off the entire block.
Gotcha. I just wanted to clarify, it was 3 hours, not 2.
3, yep.
Can you tell a little bit, assuming, once a decision is made, how the pilot program begins?
So once we have, a letter from your association, and I would assume we also would get one for the community, for the residents there, and it would all go to the council person, either a council president Clark, and part of Councilman Squillo has the south side of Girard. So we would need a letter from them approving us to go forward with these regulations.
Gotcha. And it was an 8-month period. How long of a lead up, assuming the letters are sent from the council president, et cetera, how much notice is the public given?
So,
And and I apologize, how is the notice given?
so what we do, once the regulations are implemented, the signs are all installed, we would have, there would be parking enforcement officers that would go ahead, and they're called steer clears, that would be given for X amount of time, stating that, we were getting ready to enforce this block in the upcoming future. So I really don't, I would have to ask someone from parking enforcement. I know Ed Schaefer is on the call. So if Ed could,
Ed, do you have any clarification? And by the way, good to see you.
Yeah, Mark, good to talk to you too. Ann's 100% correct. What we generally do is we'll do steer clears for a 2-week time frame,
thanks. Ed.
and it'll have phone numbers on there that they can call and ask specifically what's going on. We'll tell them the exact date that we're starting and explain the whole enforcement process to them of however long time frame is, whether it's 1, 2, 3 hours or whatever it may be.
Awesome. Thank you, Ed. And
No problem.
thank you. Appreciate it. Kay, if we could take the study down. So this is now your part of the meeting, everybody. We appreciate you listening in, and we want to be able to make sure that you have an opportunity. Again, please raise your hand. We will certainly call on you and be able to proceed. You have 2 minutes of respectful but yet pointed conversation. Also, if there are things that you think of after this, which always happens, because remember, we do have a meeting next week at 6:30. Please email me directly. It's Mark, M-A-R-C, at fishtownbid.org. And we'll be happy to make sure we get that answer for you. Also, please, as you know, we are recording this meeting, just as we did last week. We immediately, once we get the everything wound up, we send the entirety of this meeting to our elected officials, to the PPA, Streets Department, SEPTA. We make sure to post it in our newsletter and social media outlets. So we want to make sure everybody has a chance to see it. First, we're going to start with Chris. I saw you had your physical hand up, then John Scott. So Chris, you're up.
You got me? Okay, there you go.
You're good.
Okay, so I'm a business owner at Columbia and Girard. And I just found out tonight, I guess I wasn't paying attention close enough, but this study only went to Marlborough Street, and I'm a block past there. So if the study isn't even going to include my block in our area, I can't even see how we can be involved in this, because it doesn't even cover what's happening. We have turnover. I see it all the time. I come up to my store and there's a spot right there. I mean, when I was leaving today, somebody pulling out. It just happens all the time. I can show you picture after picture of a spot in front of my store. I just kept taking them since the last meeting. So it's not a problem where we are. And what is a problem is us business owners and us workers who do drive in, having to move our car every 2-3 hours. Sometimes I have one worker, he's gonna have to lock the store up. We're gonna miss, I mean, how long will it take him to find another spot? How many people will pull on that door handle while he's trying to find another spot? I can't, at least if it's metered, he might be able to use an app and pay it. But now there's another cost. He's paying more to work here and I'm gonna have to offset that cost. And I thought this was supposed to be helping me. I have customers, we're making money. I've been there 17 years, doing well. People coming to the store, liking it. It's not like I'm saying to myself, I gotta get people in this store. And what's going on with this park? It's not, I think you're trying to do a one size fits all with Frankfurt and it's just different. We have parking, we have multiple lanes. People can actually, block one lane and people just go by. The cops had even stopped ticketing because we get business done that way. And if someone gets parked in, they beep and the person moves.
10 seconds.
I got the vape store next door and they're doing faster transactions than I am. And everyone's doing well. This is going to cause a big problem for us. I'd like to be left out of it from Marlboro on. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the time again this evening. Next, John Scott, you're up.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, everyone. I spoke last December in opposition to this proposal because it was clear to me that this study was deeply flawed, and it remains so. And you just told us that the occupancy counted cars, but that's not really the whole story. You also counted the construction barriers and the eateries, which haven't moved in years. You count those as parked cars, and then you say that the turnover is too low. Mark, this time I'm going to also make some common sense suggestions and hope that we can find some actual alternatives here. First off, you mentioned the FNA. The FNA represents the community, and they have not, to my knowledge, communicated this meeting at all. In fact, they're having their own meeting right now. You can't claim you're working with them when they're not talking to us about this. We'd like a real meeting led by the residents rather than business interests. Next, if this proposal goes forward, the losers will be the workers, as I think it was Chris said, who have no choice but to drive. This proposal really only puts their money in the hands of the PPA, and it does nothing for Philadelphia. I would suggest instead that you work with City Council on programs that would expand parking options for workers, something like a worker permit. Now, the loading zones. Overworked delivery drivers are never going to go down the block to park in a loading zone. They always have and always will park directly in front of their stop throughout the city. It's always been that way and it's always worked. The only possibly useful places for loading zones happen to be the spots where the eateries already are. So my suggestion here is to scale back any new loading zones unless you can make a clear case that they will be used, and which so far you haven't done. Finally, for over a decade now, we've been complaining about the construction barriers and the sidewalks. Your group has done almost nothing. One of your businesses today had a concrete truck out for an outdoor slab, but didn't bother to fix any of the broken sidewalk in front of their property. You keep coming here asking us to support. When are you going to do your part? Thank you.
Thank you, John. One thing I want to clarify, though, about Fishtown neighbors, and you can certainly take that up with any leadership there. We have certainly letters have been sent by the FNA board with recommendations. And Mr. Keating testified last week. So anything regarding public meetings with them, and I think that's what you're talking about, you can address. Please note that we made sure through all platforms that all were invited to this and all were made aware of it. And I'm glad to see that you're there. And John, I always respect you and I appreciate your input and your insights. Next, we have.
Mark, just to be clear, FNA has a general meeting tonight.
I know they do.
Yeah, it's just a general
And
meeting.
John said that last week. Thank you, Randy. We have from Transcending Roots, if you could identify yourself.
Hey, my name's Kim. I'm the business owner at Transcending Roots. We are located between Marlboro and Columbia. And so hi, this is the first time I've joined this meeting. Your meetings are always during like dinner time and I have kids, so it's hard for me to get here. And I didn't catch it all because kids are constantly talking to me while I'm trying to listen to you. But I just wanted to chime in because I definitely agree with Chris DePinto about the issue with employees and workers and things where we also are really low staffed. We are a very, very, very small business. And so for my employees to be able to have to move their car, they would have to close the store to be able to do so. My husband also owns a tattoo shop in the neighborhood, and you can't stop in the middle of a tattoo to have to go move your car because of this 2-hour parking thing. So it poses a problem for a lot of different businesses and their employees. And then the only other thing that I wanted to just, I know that you had mentioned something about there being like kiosks for like the bikes or something. I guess, am I hearing that right? For like that being on Frankfurt Avenue or something?
So in the 2016 report, there was a recommendation for one of the blocks for like motor scooters.
I see. Yeah, I guess the only other thing that just comes to mind for me is that since COVID, we have all of the restaurants taking up half the parking in the neighborhood now with their outdoor seating that, there would be more parking if that wasn't there. But then to take up more of that parking with, motor scooters and bike parking, it just kind of it's counterproductive with the issue of not having parking in the community. But my main concern is about employees and the staffing being able to have the space to be able to park. And I agree about the option of there being something of like a employee's permit where they are able to apply monthly or something, or whatever, in whatever way it makes sense to prove that they work at that space, to be able to park in that area in that district, to be able to not make an additional cost for both the employee and for the business.
Thank you, Ken. And just so you know, we talked about it last meeting, and certainly, though that doesn't exist, it would have to be created legislatively. We as an organization would support those types of permits. Certainly making sure we find a reasonable way to do that, maybe per business or what we can talk to our elected officials office about that as well. But thank you, Kim. Appreciate the input.
Yeah, thanks.
Robert Serrano, you're up next.
Okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to talk about the fact that this wasn't really publicized again. I agree with John Scott in that. I echoed the same thing last week. I also wanted to know, I was going to ask the same question he asked about, where was the public meeting for the residents, for people to come together after the December meeting we had? I thought this was done, but now I felt like last week and this week we're having the same thing, the same like show, same staged thing. We don't even have a chat here where people can ask like follow-up questions and like say, okay, how about this? How about that? And 2 minutes is not even enough time. I mean, I felt like some people could actually go and say a little bit more about this. Like I said, I live on Frankfurt Avenue, and just like Mr. DePinto was talking about, I can actually find a parking spot. I go to the gym, come back, find a parking spot. I go to out to Costco, come back, find a spot. So, but I live right here at the heart of it where everything's at, and yet there's a lot of turnover. I could show you pictures, but we can also show you all the cars that rely on Frankfurt Avenue and Girard Avenue to park there. And if they don't park there, they're going to park in the interior, pushing all those people out. Because they'll say, well, why should I pay for a meter? I can get two hours free on Day Street, on Cree Street, on Oxford Street. Do you see what I'm saying? They'd rather do that than pay the money at the meter. And then you might have some employees at a higher end restaurant where they're getting paid a lot of money, and it doesn't matter to them. I can just feed the meter. How's that helping the turnover if they can just park there for an 8-hour shift, make their $300 or $400 for a night, and then take off? Do you see how's that?
Thank you, Robert.
Okay. Well, wait a minute.
I'm sorry. If you have more, keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So that's basically my thing. I think we need to find a way to have the residents have a dialogue with the bid. It just seems like this is just the bid's idea and it's going. We need to have a meeting with us. When is that going to happen? I don't want to come to a meeting where we're saying this is what's being imposed on you. I don't feel like there's a dialogue. There hasn't been a dialogue. There hasn't been an announcement, and like I said, my mom hasn't even gotten a message about this. We haven't seen anything. Okay. Thank you.
Robert, thanks for being here for the second week in a row. Appreciate you. If I might, I know Mike from Jinxed early on in the call wanted to comment. Mike, do you want to say something? And if you don't, that's okay if you don't. You're up. You're muted.
Thank you.
There you go.
All right, am I on?
Are you saying? Oh, sorry.
So I apologize. It really does seem like this is a way more nuanced subject than I realized coming in. I am in general, as a lifer in Philadelphia, anti-parking authority. However, for our specific blocks on Frankfurt Avenue, since this meeting was brought to my attention, I counted between the 1200 and 1400 block. There's 6 cars that haven't moved in 2 weeks because they started putting the notices under the windshield wipers for Fishtown Festadale Fest. And I mean, that's a 2-block area with 6 cars that don't move. Since I am not in favor of kiosks, I'm not in favor of meters. I'm in favor of 3-hour parking for that area, because what's happening is a lot of the cars are registered out of state, but they're clearly people that live in the neighborhood. So the permits force them to park on Frankfurt Avenue with no turnover. Now, twice a week, I have to make deliveries to my store, and we generally have to park in the middle of the street, which wouldn't be that big of an issue if there weren't, in that short area, a FedEx truck, 1 or 2 beer delivery trucks. And it's because a lot of that space is frozen. Now, also, I don't think that what my issues are apply to Girard Avenue, because I think that everybody on Girard Avenue is making an excellent point. And I mean, I'm up there every day. I think like what I'm seeing, and also I can speak for my staff because I spoke to them before I came to the meeting. They all favor it for that reason, that there is just stagnant parking because people who work from home or commute a different way, they just leave their car there indefinitely. And it would be great if it was more fluid. I do not support meters, but just something this way, if residents have a permit, they don't have to pay. They're not inconvenienced. It's not what I'm trying to do at all. But for people that aren't registered where they live and, just situations like that on my specific block and the blocks very close to me, it is an issue, and I would support 3-hour parking, but I am not in favor of the scooter thing. Absolutely not. And I'm not in favor of meters either. So if that's just kind of my 2 cents on it, because
Thank you, Mike.
What I've noticed too, real quick, is that when we do deliveries, when the other trucks are doing deliveries, the Ubers and the people stopping at La Colombe and stopping at businesses quickly then start to park in the middle of the street as well. So then you get it all stacked up, a truck or 3-4 cars deep, and then you start to have people that don't know how to go around, vehicles having to back down Frankfurt Avenue, and then sometimes it just blocks up and everybody has to go around the block. So that's the situation that I specifically am dealing with. Again, I'm not trying to speak for the whole neighborhood, but for my specific area, that is what I would like to see.
Thank you, Mike. And I want to be clear, this is why these are important. This isn't a formal. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to hear what Chris has been saying, because regardless of whatever, yes, we want turnover for customers but we also don't want to inconvenience businesses and their employees. So these comments are very helpful, making those comments. Kay, I know, is out because Kay has been working very hard on Feast of Vale. So Kay, do you have any comments? Time yourself.
I will reiterate that as I've been flyering for Feast of Vale, Mike is right that on 2 blocks of Frankfurt Avenue alone, there's been 6 cars that have not moved since over a week and a half now. I will also say that in the PPA lot on the 1300 block of Frankfurt Avenue, less than a third of those cars have moved in a week and a half. Which honestly, that's a little more disheartening than anything, because that's the majority of our handicap parking spaces for business owners, and accessibility for our corridor is super important. So that being said, but that's all I have to say. Mike from Myers Brewing has had his hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead, pal.
Hi, how are you? I wasn't on the last week, and Adam from Milk Crate actually called me. I somehow missed this as well. So I might not be as versed with all the information, so a little bit more of what I say might have already been said or something, but I do have questions to end it with. I'm just a little confused on how, I guess, Girard is lumped so far into this. I come here every day. I find parking every day. My staff comes here. 80% of my staff is from South Philly. They come here, they have to find parking. If they've got to leave and we're a night business and there's no way. Like, we run real lean with staff. It's hard to get staff. And then for them to have to leave the building is going to be more work for me, because I got to be here to watch the building while they run and move their cars, including me, I would have to move my car all day long, or I'm going to go park on the interiors where all the residents park to find myself a parking spot when I come here all day. And that's going to take spots. And my other question about Girard Avenue is, I feel like only 40% of the buildings on Girard Avenue are business buildings, and there's 60% of them are residences. So it's not like a beaming commercial corridor that is completely made up of businesses that are active, that are needing this parking, I guess. And a lot of us down here are nighttime businesses, which, that would be so hard for us to figure out how to find alternatives for that. And we're I think I could probably speak for some of the other bars on the street. Like, we have a lot of regulars. Our patrons walk, down to us. So we don't see a ton of people coming in with cars that need parking and things like that. And I don't get that as a constant complaint, from customers trying to come here. And then ones that do come, and I host events and parties, they do find parking. So I feel like my biggest question is Girard Avenue not having, all these businesses down here, why we're lumped in with it as well. And what else did I write down here? Let's see. I guess that's the majority of what I have. And my last question is, does this extend past Marlboro, or is this including all of East Girard Avenue? And as well, my last point would be owners that park, like, do we get a parking spot like under a permit situation, or are we out in the cold too for being owners and not residences of here? I come in from out of town. Sorry, I threw a bunch of stuff there at one time, but.
Thank you, Mike. And just to at least answer the last part, the study, so the regulations, if they're done, would be from front on East Girard to Marlboro. That's it.
Okay.
As we talked about before, the only override is a residential permit, because that's the only thing that exists. There's no business one as of now.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
I see someone hands up that it says Bowie or Bowie. You can identify yourself and.
It's Adam from Milk Crate
Oh, what's
Cafe.
up, buddy? How are you? I apologize.
Good, Mark. No, it's no problem. It's my daughter's name. So, it seems a little moot at this point, because it's the same thing as Mike and the same thing as Chris and the same thing as Kim, that we're like, doesn't seem we're part of the district that would potentially get this. I mean, my concerns are obviously the similar things, but if I don't need to voice this, if we're not really under consideration for, will it be considered for us to have metered parking here, or to have timed parking?
Not as of now. Okay.
Can I make a clarification? So if I remember correctly, part of the discussion around Girard specifically came from FNA, because one of their biggest pieces of feedback from their polling amongst themselves was the double parking issue on Girard. So they felt strongly that there should be parking regulations on Girard, and that's what initiated the Girard conversation. So I felt like that context was important.
Thank you, Ken.
It is. So, I mean, I don't want to add the concerns if we're not even going to be affected by that. I mean, that's, I guess, a conversation for another time.
I think hearing your concerns are still valid and worth putting on the record.
Okay. My concerns would be the employee issue of parking, and as an owner, not being a resident of Fishtown anymore would be the parking, and then leaving to move cars, the added cost of employees to be able to pay for parking. Those would be my concerns.
Thank you, Adam. And we always appreciate hearing from you, and we appreciate it. By the way, does anybody else have anything before we wrap up? Troy, you're on.
All right, I have a question. There's loading zones up on the 1300 block by Fishtown Tavern for the businesses across the street. And yet every day, numerous times during the day, I got trucks unloading in front of my house and sometimes blocking Shack Max and almost causing accidents. Why can't they enforce that and put that whole block of the 1300 block of Frankfurt Avenue just for loading only?
I have some PPA reps on the phone. I know which Troy's talking about. Ann and Ed, Troy lives on Chacamaxon Street, so it's like really just right on Frankfurt Avenue, and they're limited parking as it is. Anything you could say to kind of address what he just said, or how to handle situations like that?
Well, it's not regulated right there. Is that, if I'm understanding him correctly, it's not regulated there. He sees it, maybe having loading zones during the day for the trucks to come in and unload.
It sounds
No.
like, Troy, you're saying that the truck is literally, even though there is a loading zone, parking on his residential block and not using it.
There's no loading zone in front of my house. It's a no parking zone. And there's planters out there that yet that park in front of the planters, as opposed to going up one block up where there are loading zones like in Fishtown Tavern and delivered to the businesses across the street.
So if a parking enforcement officer, if it was an unregulated block, they normally don't enforce if it's not our regulations. But if they're going to that loading zone and they do see a vehicle in a safety, which would be that no parking zone you're speaking of, they should be able to go ahead and enforce that zone.
I think on Troy's block, they actually have the restriction, right, Troy?
Yes,
Oh, they have the 2-hour parking?
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Then they should be enforcing that.
So what we need, so I guess if there is a plus of having the regulation, certainly on Frankfurt, there would actually be somebody physically on foot.
Right, but there
Right.
is already someone there. If they already have 2-hour parking, residential permit parking, there should be enforcement there. I'm sure we can talk about this tomorrow, Ed Schaefer and myself, and see if whoever has that area, we can go ahead and ask them to, be very mindful of that no parking on the corner.
And certainly, Troy, if you see that, you can let Kay or I know. At least that's why we can get in touch with our colleagues over at the PPA to try to get someone over there in an expeditious manner, so you're not inconvenienced any more than
Yeah, it's just
you can.
inconvenient because you can't open the window because they're constantly out there idling all day long.
Sure.
Right. No, that should be an enforceable spot then.
Thank you, and thank you, Troy. Jen Jasuda. Hello, Jen. You're up. Jen, are you there?
Jen, if you're on a phone, sometimes you have to unmute in 2 different ways. So you might be needing to unmute again.
Well, how's this? I want to offer it up to see if anyone else has any final things. Then we will go back to Jen to see if she's able to get through, because I see she's not muted on the Zoom. Any final comments before we finish up and we close today?
I'd like to just say, so definitely from Marlboro on to 95 on Girard, we're not involved in this at all, and we can just kind of hang out. And
You
not
can
be
hang
involved.
loose.
I can hang loose and I
Yes.
should have said that last week. Okay. I won't come out of my store and see signs someday, right?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Mhm.
Jen, are you there? Maybe we'll.
I'm asking her to unmute to see if that works.
All right. I think we may have to try her again next week.
Jen, feel free to email us your comments as well.
And we'll make sure to get you an answer. I want to thank everybody this evening for taking the time, and especially the ones who have joined us last week and have come back again today. We know this is a difficult subject, and we know that there is a lot of vast different opinions on this issue. The thing that, as I look at here, And I want to try to convey to everybody, this is not, at least as far as the bids perspective, this has not been simply done in a vacuum. We really do try to and have engaged, our elected officials, community partners, certainly the FNA board. And this certainly is, this 2016 study is done, and certainly there weren't streeteries there then for Frankfurt Avenue, showed the need that something needs to be done. And I always close with this is, there was a story I saw during 2021 of a little town in Italy that had a car that somehow was parked there for probably 30 to 40 years, same, which someone could do here. And they got so tired of it that they built a little monument around it. And it's a funny little story, except that it can happen here. And we want to make sure that you're all able to be able to travel through here and park through here and enjoy, whether it's your homes, your businesses, the businesses you like to frequent, as easy and as convenient as possible. We understand, we certainly know that the engagement has been going on this matter since I've been here. This is at least the 4th or 5th meeting that we have hosted. We have certainly made sure to invite not just our stakeholders, but all involved, including municipal and state departments and neighbors. And we will certainly continue to do so because all voices are valid. I know the Star newspaper has also written at least 2 articles about this, at least one of them interviewing several people from FNA. Having said all that, every comment that you made, we take that to heart. We are certainly going to review, and we will make sure before any steps are done and taken after our 3rd meeting that we will make sure to inform everyone. Certainly, if any regulations are coming down, we will be happy to host again informational meetings and instructional meetings about what's to come and what to expect. I want to thank Ann O'Neill and Ed Thornton from the Philadelphia Parking Authority for again taking the time out and for going through the reports and answering our questions today. I want to thank Venice Whitaker from the Council President's Office for again joining us today, and certainly for her work with us and certainly being a great sounding board. And lastly, I want to thank all of you for just listening in or certainly giving your opinions today. They mean a lot to us. Before I go, I'm going to try one more time. Jen D'Souza, are you there? Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Have a great night.